Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Help to Grow Management Alumni session. And it is on exporting smarter, not harder. And I'd like to welcome you all. It's great to have you here. Now, quick introduction of myself. My name is Robin Hill, and I am from UK Export Academy, which is a part of DBT, Department for Business and Trade. My past experience, I've been an importer and exporter and importer to export. I have had my own SMEs, both in goods and services, 2 companies, lots of experience in the background, not a typical civil servant, lots and lots of practical experience, I would say there. And most importantly, I am your chair today for this what I'm sure will be an illuminating session. And I have the responsibility of controlling the other speakers that you can see on screen here, which I'm sure will be no mean feat because we have loads and loads to get through today. And also my other responsibility is the housekeeping. So before we get going, I am going to go through a couple of things. First one, the session is being recorded. You should be able to see that on your screen. And that recording will be posted by close of play today on the Alumni Hub, where you booked to register for this session. And it will also be accompanied by any links that we as the guests today have felt pertinent to share. So we've all gone through bits and pieces that we think will be important to you in your export journey. Those links will be on there. And the other thing is questions. And one of the great advantages of you coming along to the live session today, you get to question everybody on the panel. So in order to do that most effectively, at the bottom of your screen, you will see in the browser, you have 2 chat options. The first one, chat. Anything technical in there. If you want to do any networking, if you want to make any comments or whatever observations, then please pop them in there. But if you have any questions for anybody on the panel, please use towards the sort of middle right there, you'll see Q&A. And as we go through the session today, it may well be for straightforward questions. Then any of us will pick those up, type you an answer. Any that are left towards the end, or maybe they've not been addressed, so we'll get to them at the end, then we'll open those up and hopefully we'll have a few minutes there just to sort of run through those, and each of the panel can give you their answers based on their experience. So DBT, Department for Business and Trade, I'm sure you know who we are. You'll have heard us. You'll have seen Jonathan Reynolds, the Secretary of State. He's been signing a lot of free trade agreements recently. He's been big in the news, looking at promoting business, promoting export around the world. So DBT consists of about, I think, 7,500 people, all around the globe, all on your side if you are looking to start exporting, and all looking to make things as easy, as profitable as possible for you. And the one big thing about DBT, and the one thing I never knew during my time exporting and in business, is you can reach out to us at any time and we'll help you. We will, maybe if you reach out to me, I won't have all the answers, but there will be somebody I can direct you to who will be able to. So do not suffer alone. That's the big thing. There is so much resource out there from DBT. Now, each of the three guest panelists that you can see here today are what we call DBT export champions. And export champions are people that are actively exporting now, and they have been doing so for a period of time. They give us their time free of charge, and it is great for you because you get to learn peer to peer what people have been through, what challenges they've gone through, what they have struggled with, where they've been successful. And it's those little hints, those little tips that one day you will go, I remember such and such saying that, and it will be helpful to you. And hopefully it'll make you more successful, and it will enable you not to make some of the mistakes that we've all made over the years. So at this point, I am going to pass over to the panelists so that they can do a general introduction, and then we'll start getting on with the questions. So, Kath, if you'd like to kick off.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Robin. I'm Kath Darlington, MBE. I'm the CEO of Scott Partnership. We're a Cheshire-based business-to-business marketing and PR agency that specialises in the scientific industry. I'm a linguist. My postgrad was in export marketing. This is a very long time ago, but it makes me a bit predisposed to export. So working internationally is in our DNA. We set up the business in 1996 and have been exporting more or less since then. Now over 75% of our business is from overseas clients.
Thank you. Glenn?
Yes, so hi, I'm Glenn Marriott. So I'm commercial controller here at Village Bakery in Wrexham. So we are a bakery company specializing in premium private label bakery products, all the way from sourdough breads through to things like bagels, pancakes, crumpets. I also head up all of our export business. In a previous life, when I worked in New Zealand, where I'm from, I exported out of New Zealand to various countries in Asia and Australia and the US. And now I'm doing the opposite and exporting from the UK back to Australia and New Zealand and various places like that.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Glenn. And please note, he did say New Zealand the other day. I assumed he was from Australia. Hopefully, I didn't upset you too much there, Glenn. But we've resolved that one now. But just a hint to anybody asking him any questions. James, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's James. I'm the founder of a company called Unisim. And we make essentially like flight simulators for doctors and dentists. And I've been really lucky. My first customer was in Spain exporting. And since then, it's taken me to 57 different countries. So Spain, Italy, a bit closer to home, and even places that are a bit more topical now, like Palestine, India, Pakistan, Russia, Ukraine. So it's amazing to get to see the world as well as export to it. So that's me.
Lovely. Thank you, James. And you officially win the award there on the introductions for the coolest person with this. And well done. Right, let's get into the questions because that's why people are here. So just a general one to kick off. How did you each get started on your export journey, and how did you know, what pointers did you get that you were ready to start doing so? So let's go in reverse order. James, perhaps you can kick that one off.
Okay, so I'm guessing my journey's a little bit different to most people. So mine started with an idea. I drew that idea on a bit of paper, and then I took it to a few different universities and said, look, could you just give me some feedback? Is this the type of format you'd want? Here's the price I think I can make it in. Would that be acceptable? And one of the first people I showed it to was a guy called Diego Gonzalez from a private university that was launching in Spain. And he said, if you promise me you can get to that price point, I'll take 10. And so within a week, I'd signed off. We had this pro forma sent to them, and they paid 50% of it up front. So our first customer was exporting before we had anything to export. But that's how it got started. And then by chance, it landed at the same time with COVID. That university was one of the only universities that stayed open pretty much throughout COVID, because our products allowed them to do it essentially on a PC using haptics. And it didn't include water spray, it didn't include aerosols, which is what they normally use in the clinics. So then from there, it just spread like wildfire from mouth to mouth, from university to university.
Right. Unusual to get your first sale as an export.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But we're glad we did.
Right, over to you, Glenn.
I mean, for us, we'd sort of always had a tenuous link with a couple of UK retailers where we'd supplied product for them, which was then shipped from the UK to their various overseas markets. But we'd never sort of looked seriously at exporting ourselves outside of the UK. And it was really, we got asked back in 2022 by DBT if we'd be interested in hosting a busload of DBT in-market managers who were on a tour of the UK and were in Wales for the afternoon, which we did. And everyone came in for the afternoon, had a great time, made sourdough bread with us, which was great fun. And over the course of the afternoon, we started getting inquiries from people saying, you know, are you in this market? Are you in this market? And it was a bit of a light bulb moment where it was like, right, okay, we should probably take this a bit more seriously and give it a go. So that was really the catalyst. And then off the back of that, there was some local coverage in the press, which then generated some inquiries from markets abroad asking if we exported to countries X, Y, and Z, and that's really how we started off, to be honest. So it was really the DBT that kicked things off for us.
So not everybody's ideal scenario, having 16 civil servants wandering around your premises. However, it proved to be profitable for you. So no, that's great. And Kath.
Yeah, Robin, it's a bit similar and a bit different to both Glenn and James in that we sort of look at exporting as both proactive and reactive. And our original decision was reactive to a degree, a bit like Glenn's, in that our first client was based in the UK. It was a scientific company owned by an American business. And we were originally just a B2B agency. You know, we could launch any B2B products, and we were in multiple markets. And we did two things when we were working with this client. We chose to focus on the niche of science, which they were in, and to export more because they were owned by an American company. And there were two reasons for that, really. That client pulled us into markets that we could not have accessed if they hadn't been owned by that American corporation. And that gave us the ability to see opportunities that we just couldn't see in the UK. We liked the money. I'm going to be very frank about that. There was more money available on the table in America than there was in the UK. And that immediately turned us to pivot. There was also a barrier to entry that we could create, which was science is a specialist industry and any agency can promote anything, but there's a sort of perceived barrier to entry about understanding the language of science. So we had this niche that we pivoted towards. We also saw that in the UK, it is a recessionary market occasionally, and marketing and PR are discretionary spends. So people actually cut them immediately when they see recession coming. And we wanted to de-risk our business. So the global pharmaceutical industry is much more stable, and it was enabling us to de-risk our business. So effectively, we jumped in very early.
Right. So some big calls there, but they turned out to be profitable. Yeah.
Very.
The one thing that you've all kind of alluded to, touched on, is this whole idea of research, the market research element. And it's one of the things that I know that when I'm talking to companies, and in my own case, I took it very seriously. It's kind of the start point for everything. What was the extent of your research? And how or what support did you kind of use in order to undertake it? Let's stay with you there, Kath.
Okay. I mentioned proactive and reactive. And I guess in the first few years of our business model, we were reactive to the opportunities, and then we pivoted to being proactive. We had two questions for ourselves. One was, this is in the old days, way before COVID, when people did business in person. So our first question was, do we have to be in market? And our second question was, as a service provider, therefore, do we have to employ in market? So we really didn't know whether our clients were happy to have a distant agency or not. I mean, they seemed to be, they were paying, we were winning business. And we really wanted to answer that question. We did work very closely with DBT, and we take that approach to market decision making very seriously. From our point of view, we like to follow the same model every time, which effectively is desk research, in-market research, really scale up the size of the market, have a look at the opportunity. And then the key thing is, do we proceed or do we back out? And, you know, clearly, like everybody, sometimes we make mistakes, but that you get so many answers that it really does help you to make a sort of more balanced decision. So we've worked with DBT to answer that first question about should we go to America, and then we've repeatedly done that ever since. So I guess we reacted until we became proactive.
Right. Okay. No, that's great. And you, I mean, very, very sort of the straightforward, if you like, the classical approach, desk, in market, and go on from there. So just leading on to Glenn and James, thinking of in market, and this is again one of the things that lots and lots of people ponder as part of their market research. How important, and what's your approach to the in market element of what Kat's just gone through? So Glenn.
I mean, for us, the model we tend to operate is we will, if there's a market we want to go into, we will do all our due diligence and all our market research. Then we look for a single partner in each market that sort of have the same, I suppose, business principles of us, same values, and that we know that we can work with long term. And then we will just set up a partnership with them to move forward. We don't operate a model where we may have like 2 or 3 different distributors in a country, because they will end up tripping over each other. So we just focus on working with one person and letting them have a really close relationship with them, and sort of let them do the groundwork, and then still, when possible, sort of head over and get a market with them. So, I mean, case in point, Australia, we've got a distributor who we work with in Australia, who we've done so for nearly 2 years now. And they're our eyes and ears on the ground. They represent us, and also, you know, they're here at the moment, so they're over in the UK. They've been here today, in fact, working on some products and some tweaks to products. So that's sort of the approach we take in all of the markets that we work in.
Okay, so if you were appointing a distributor with Australia, I guess fairly straightforward, one country, one distributor. Yeah. If you ever go to a trading block, I mean, I don't know if you're into GCC, for example, would you take the same approach, or would you look for somebody in each country?
So GCC is an interesting one, because a lot of the GCC retailers tend to have a UK-based consolidator. Right. So if I use, say, Lulu, as an example, they have a UK-based consolidator that they work with. So it makes life easier, because you deal with them, all your product goes to them, and then they do all the work for you in terms of getting listings and agreeing pricing and things like that. So that's a very simple model that a lot of them use. But then there are other instances where, in some of the GCC countries, the retailers are only limited to that one country. So that does then open it up, where you either have to go direct to the retailer, or again, the one we deal with, they have a UK-based consolidator. So we tend to find now that with the Middle East in particular, everyone has a UK-based consolidator that will do all the legwork for you.
Right. Okay, fine. And James, coming to you, and before I ask you just to comment on that particular thing, I saw a question in the chat just now, and it was, what inspired you to go to the universities with your first offering? Because clearly it was an inspired idea.
Well, it comes from having worked. I don't know if everyone's aware of sort of tech and coding and how that's done, but the vast majority is then called agile development process, and it's based with that idea in place. Is that if you're going to do something, if you're going to test something, you need to do it as quick as possible and get feedback on it, so that you can course correct if your customer isn't aligned with what you think you should be doing. So in development, we code something, we code a feature, and every 2 weeks we test that feature with a client, and then see how they use it, see what the feedback is. So when I started the business, I thought the exact same thing. I've got this idea that doesn't really exist anywhere, and I have no way of knowing if my hypothesis of what's going to work and whether it's going to be successful, if there's a need for it. So my idea was just to get feedback on the design. Am I going the right way? But obviously that was validated by the fact that you gave me an order for 10 simulators up front.
Absolutely fantastic. Hopefully, Paula, that answers your question. And just to make the point there, if you do have any questions, please pop them in Q&A, because although I'm scanning chat and Q&A at the same time here, it's easier for me just to be scanning Q&A. So please pop them over there. Right. So coming on to the question we were looking at, this idea of in-market support, keeping in touch with your customer, building relationships, and so forth. Where do you? What's your position on that?
Yeah, I mean, ours again's fairly unique. It's a niche, but a niche worldwide. There's about 1,300 dental university practices that teach. So ours is first, and I like Kath's way of looking at it. So our first one's reactive. We'll get an inbound email, an inbound phone call from a university in a new country. Then immediately I'm on the phone to a guy called Roy, who's my ITA. Get involved in any government stuff. Everything's an acronym, International Trade Advisor. And then he immediately emails me about 10 different documents that the government has, which is research on that country. Then it allows me to inform my discussions that I have with that one university. With the equipment we have, I then have to come to the country either to do the demo or install them. Contact Rory again, and then he puts me in contact with local agents in that country, sometimes DBT or sometimes FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office. So my last one for that was in Hong Kong. I got given the research before I went. Two individuals, so they came help me for the demo, and then because of their presence, it then meant that all the important people turned up for the demo because they wanted to meet someone from British government. So it was amazing. And then after that, we switched, because like now, not only do we know there's sort of a hunger for it in that country, though the universities or government institutes may be limited, we now have simulators in the country that mean we can do low-cost demos and they can come to university. They're happy to show off their equipment as well. So, So that's the sort of switch we make. We don't look at a country before we've sold something there. Yep. We react, and then we switch and try to go deeper into that country while we've got the advantage of being there first, our equipment's there, etc.
Right. Okay. No, wonderful. And if I could just explain for the audience that this magical Roy, who the ITA, the International Trade Advisor, Roy is an ITA within DBT, and we have ITA offices all over England, and they are supported by UK central government. I must make the point that they, generally speaking, are outside of London for some reason. I don't know the reason for that. Then within the devolved nations, you also have ITAs, and they will be in Wales, in Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and you can reach out to them. Now, I know the criteria for using or having access to an ITA is that you are turning over more than $500,000 a year in the domestic market, and you are then ready to start looking at exporting. So just to sort of clarify that. So if you are in that position and you're not talking to an ITA, let us know, because we'll get you in touch with them. So there's a very different view of, or a very different approach to exporting services and exporting goods. And quite often service exporters are called accidental exporters, or as you've just heard James say, a reactionary. Quite often, depending on what they're exporting in services, they don't even realize they're exporting, because it's as simple as sitting on a session like this. James could be based in Bolivia. I'm here. I'm providing him with a service. He's paying me for it. I'm exporting. Believe you me. So what do you find are the unique challenges, James, to exporting, being a services exporter?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's both. So we offer the product, the actual simulator, which they get, and then we export services in terms of we do training sessions where they pay for our time to be there, and sort of presentations to other universities where they're showcasing the equipment. For us, the services are fine. We don't have much problems with that. But products, on the other hand, gets a little bit murkier. And like we very quickly found out that you had to smartly choose your HS code, your harmonized system code, to then use that to figure out what taxes you're going to be paying both on export and import going through. So that was a lifesaver, the HS tariff checker.
Yep, love commodity codes. Passing that point, commodity codes, exporting generally as goods exporters. Glenn, any tips there? Any observations?
I think, commodity codes and food are a bit easier to navigate. Paperwork into the EU post Brexit is not. So I think every market you go into is different, and everyone has different requirements. Scandinavia, your pallets have to be 1.2 meters, whereas the rest of Europe is 1.8. Middle East, no poppy seeds for obvious reasons, and nothing that contains alcohol and things like that. Navigating health certificates and different paperwork for all the different EU countries is by far probably the most challenging thing that we come up against on a daily basis. So and I think it's about doing your when you decide to go into a country, doing your homework and just finding out what you actually what specific requirements there are, because the requirements for France in terms of shipping product in are different to the requirements for Italy, which are different for Norway. So that's the I suppose probably the biggest challenge that we would face from a goods supplying perspective.
I mean, thinking about the Middle East, I was on a session. Sorry, I was on a session not so long ago on halal. Yep. And the halal doesn't just extend to the product, seemingly. It can extend to packaging. This was a new idea to me, and you can very easily fall foul of that. Is that something you've experienced of?
No, we're because the product that we or some of the products we send across sort of don't contain any products of animal origin or anything like that. We've sort of managed to not encounter any issues with halal certification so far. So, but I'm sure, look, in the future, it could possibly be something we have to try and navigate.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Kath?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of put a quick voice in for services, because I think the UK tends to focus a lot on export of goods, but they're in decline, and the service industry exporting is in growth, and only about 10 to 11% of British businesses export anyway. So I just wanted to reassure people, I sometimes feel humbled. It is easier to export services than it is to export goods, and therefore people on this call maybe should consider it if they have a services business, because it provides them a scale-up potential that maybe they haven't thought about.
No, absolutely. Quite often we forget the fact that we're the second largest services exporter in the world. We have a fantastic reputation for it, and an awful lot of the FTAs now that are being signed are being they're being given a services focus to try and make it easier for companies, UK companies, to start exporting their services. So great observation there. So what are the differences do you see for exporting between different company sizes, the small, the medium, the large? Kath, would you like to jump in on that?
As an export company, really it's about looking at the sort of the cost to the business and the opportunity to the business. So if you're a small business, you can probably actually scale up quite quickly by using support such as with DBT and other suppliers to ensure that you've got the right structures in place, the right advice in place, and do it very quickly. But the key thing is looking at how your customers are buying and how you sell. So, for example, Glenn leads an export department and is clearly in a sales function. My business is a small business. We're a service provider, so we don't even have a sales function. So actually, how you approach your export is really important. How you structure the approach to the market, how you enter the market, whether you need an entity, whether you're selling direct, all of those things are huge cost advantages or disadvantages. So you have to think it through very, very carefully because of the impact on a business.
Yeah, and you mentioned cost there. There's a question actually come in about the most cost-effective ways, directed to you, Kath, to undertake your market research. Any thoughts?
Okay, so well, we used to, and have always followed the same model. We used to use the EMRS program from what used to be UKTI. For anybody who's not as old as me, that was Export Market Research Scheme, which used to be a 50% funded grant program. And there's a really good document, I think Sibel is going to circulate it afterwards, called Surfing, a DBT document about how to do your desk research. But basically, we used to start by saying, we want to do all the desk research and we want to do all the in-market research, but instead of outsourcing it to somebody, we want to do it in-house because we want to look in the whites of the eyes of the prospects. And we would do all the market size analysis, and then we would go into market, set up appointments with all our prospects, all our contacts, all our competitors, everybody else we knew in the market, and we'd just do a roadshow, and we'd go and ask people the same questions and see how that answered. Normally what we're trying to find out is this a big market? Are we going to make money? Where's our niche going to be? How do you as a buyer make decisions so that we could really formulate that plan? And for us, doing it ourselves meant we were hands-on, and the double opportunity is we could win business by being in front of people. So there was always a sort of win-win. It was an investment cost, but we did it all the time. We've replicated that in every market we've gone to, with USA, China, India, etc.
Right. Okay. And Glenn, just moving on to you. You've started off. You had the 16 civil servants all running around there, messing around with your sourdough. You decided to start exporting. You went from small, you went to big. How did that work out for you?
It's interesting. So we're not a small business. So Village Bakery is quite a large business, but from an export perspective, we are a small business because we were effectively starting from zero. So I think it was effectively getting one customer and then building on that and just building our both our profile and our relationships over the course of the last 3 years. And I think with the support that we've got from both DBT and Welsh Government, because one of the beauties of being in Wales is you do get a lot of support from Welsh Government, being an exporter, and where we'd wanted to target markets, we got a lot of support from both entities, and we were able to capitalize on that, and that has opened doors for us. So we've been on a pretty steep growth trajectory over the last 3 years, and we're continuing to on with that journey. So it's sort of small fish in big pond would probably be the best way to describe it, because you do find that you do end up, whilst you're the sales guy, you also end up being the project manager and doing all supply chain stuff. And so if you want it to succeed, you've got to be quite driven to do it, I think.
Yeah. No, good point. But you're from New Zealand. You're used to being a small fish. You swim with great white sharks over there, don't you? It's
very true. Not personally, but
so just moving on a bit here to the idea of culture. It's a big one. James, how do you approach culture in the various parts of the world that you are interacting with, that you're exporting to?
I think there's two sides to it. One's like the business side, dealing with how it works in terms of invoicing or how the structure of the deal has to be set out for that country or for that region. Like, for instance, in Saudi, you need to register for NUTCO, which is the sort of central tendering system, and it has to be done by a local business. So there's no point trying to do that yourself. You have to work with the local culture, the local way of doing things. Otherwise, you just can't deal with them. But it's funny because every event I do about export, the biggest subject for people is always culture clashes in terms of making the deal with a person face to face. And they always give horror stories of, I lost £1 million deal because I didn't hold my business card with two hands. But like I said, we've gone to 57 countries now, and I don't really worry. I mean, you're dealing with people, and most people are nice. And as long as you're doing it with a smile on your face and good intentions, like, they realize that you're from a different country. They realize you might make little mistakes, and they let you go for it. And if it's really serious, then they take you aside and go, "Oh, just be aware that we do it like this here." I've never once lost a deal because of cultural clashes. But I have for not understanding the local way of doing things for the business. And that's the one to take seriously, I think.
Right. Okay. So as long as you're respectful, you found that to be successful, but maybe a bit of a deeper dive on the business side in terms of understanding the culture. Okay. Kath, over to you. How have you approached the whole area of culture?
Well, firstly, it starts at home. I mentioned that I'm a linguist, and we have a company policy of proactively trying to recruit linguists as much as we can, in the same way that Glenn indicated, he's open to export and has moved from New Zealand to the UK. People who understand other cultures and talk other languages have a predisposition to be comfortable and respectful moving into other markets. So that's a real big priority for us, having somebody who will respect the markets in which they're working. But I mean, very much like James, we really look in absolute detail at how markets transact, and we compare, we contrast, we look at all of the pros and cons. We look at what the US does versus the UK, what China does versus India, and we make our decisions about whether a market is going to be good or bad for us based on what we find in our due diligence. But on the ground, it's about having as much information as you can. And there's lots of resources. I know the CIA has a website that's really good for market information. I know that DBT has its, different country information. There's lots of information that really helps you prepare to work in particular markets. And sometimes being the opposite of what people expect. So a woman in the room in a country where they don't expect you works to your advantage. So don't be afraid of that.
Right, good point. Now you do a lot in America. Now, just maybe in a few lines, just explain the difference between the kind of the transactional American approach to doing business and maybe doing business in much more laid back countries where it's about the relationship. Because to me, this is always a big one. And if people are going to fall over, it's kind of where they trip up.
Well, maybe our experience is, again, contrary to that of expectations, in that we've been working in America for decades now, and we have really long-standing relationships with clients. So I think we're lucky in that those relationships have always been long and always been deep. So we don't see a difference in the relationship between a client in America or a client anywhere else now. That said, you just have to be alert to normal business practices. I was fortunate enough to study at Kellogg School of Management in Northwestern on a DBT sponsored course for British businesses, but entering the market. And they said, okay, you're all sitting here, you're British businesses, you want to come and conquer America. Look at you all so confident. And do you know what's going to happen? Your competitors are going to slaughter you. And we sat there and we went, that doesn't sound very good. But you know what? They were right. That was really interesting because I'm quite naive and sometimes I'm optimistic. So I'll walk into an opportunity and I'll always see the opportunity and I'll really try and negotiate my way through that. But that naivety can be taken advantage of in America. And it was, I went around with one of our EMRSs and told our competitors what our plan was. And they immediately went to all our clients and told our clients that they could do what we were doing better, cheaper, on the ground. It was a very costly mistake, shall we call it? So, really listen to how markets behave, I think is what I'm saying. And when you have disasters, then the big thing is the resilience of how you deal with them.
Right. Yeah. No, good. So from a lesson learned there with you, Kath, I'm going to go over to Glenn and say, Glenn, lessons learned for you, and any surprises that you've had in exporting, good or bad?
I think we've had a pretty good run so far. I mean, we have probably one of the challenges we face is you do face competition, especially in Europe, from other, I suppose, bakery companies that are there and can provide a cheaper product. And that we do come up against that, and we have lost business on that basis. But that's just it happens sometimes. But what we like to do is build on the fact that we have got you're with us to begin with because we've got a really good quality product, and the service we deliver is excellent, and also we've got a really good relationship. But you do find that you do get at the end of the day, some people will just go on price. And so you will lose business that way. But that's just the nature of exporting. I think probably the one that's caught us out most recently, I think, is the whole Scandinavian pallet size and how they do that. I mean, we ran a whole project where we would basically spec deal everything to go out in standard pallet sizes, and we basically got about 3 days out from the first load going, and they were like, no, you can't do that, and it just been missed on both sides all the way through. It's but then you have to sort of swivel and just kind of make a few adjustments and off you go. So and I'm sure James and Kath will agree, it's just the nature of export. You just have to think on your feet sometimes.
Yeah, resilience in action there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep. And James, there's a couple of questions here, and one in particular for you. Are you manufacturing in the UK? And if so, are you importing your components? And therefore, you can see where this is leading to. How difficult, how challenging is it for you in terms of the country of origin certification and so forth? Following the rules of origin.
I mean, it follows on to what the guys were saying. It's like you figure this stuff out as you go along, and you talk to people, you find out, you make mistakes, you find out, you don't make the same mistake again. I mean, exporting for the certificate of origin. So, I mean, we make it all in the UK. Generally, the rule for CEOs, I found out, is that around more than 50% of the value of the final product should come from what you've done in the UK. That's the general rule, but there are other ones as well. But it's another one where you talk to people. Like I'm sure all of us would respond to an email if you sent one to us, and then if we can't answer it, point you in the right direction to someone, or share what mistakes we've done. But
So,
but yeah, I
so
mean
do you?
that's
Sorry.
the standard one.
Yeah. So are
So I was
you?
going to say, just for the
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce specifically,
Yeah.
they're the people you want to connect with if you need to get a certificate of origin, and they'll be able to tell you what you need to do to be able to get it.
Yeah, and that's a really, really valid point there about the chambers. If you're not a member of a chamber, really, really have a look at it, because they give so much pertinent advice. And it might just be down to a simple filling in of a form. It might be down to a much more complex, how do I calculate for rules of origin and so forth. Most of the chambers will have specialist people that are dealing with export, and they're dealing with it day in, day out. So, a really, really good non-governmental resource there. So moving on, I always found exporting rewarding for lots and lots of reasons, breaking down the cultural barriers, dealing with people in different areas, different countries, visiting them, obviously. What have been the most rewarding parts of your journey? Glenn, let's start with you.
I think for me, it's cracking Australia was definitely been a highlight. Having obviously being from New Zealand, I think Australia was a big one for us because we knew there was gaps in market there that we could exploit in terms of product range that we have. So to be able to sit up there was really really satisfying. Being a Welsh export champion as well, that's not something you sort of apply for. That's sort of, you get picked out for that. And you never know these things are coming. So, but again, I think that has it elevates your profile both as a business and an individual, and allows you to make more of an impact within the exporting community. And then I think finally for us, I mean, after the combination of the last 3 years is winning a King's Award for international trade this year. So I think that out of everything we've done, that's probably topped it off the most. Is that both from a company standpoint and what that will do, but also quite sort of a little bit of quiet recognition for all the work that's been done over the last 3 years by myself and a couple of other people. So and then you get all the other stuff, like you get to visit countries that you haven't been to. You're sometimes lucky enough to end up at the odd British embassy or ambassador's residence for a cocktail party every now and then. So those are the sort of those are the nice bits. But there's a lot of graft before you can get to that sort of point.
Sure. I mean, winning the King's Award is immense. I mean, it makes you a member of an exclusive club. What do you see that's going to bring to your business from a practical perspective?
I think validation of where we are as exporters. I think, I mean, we've already seen it's attracted attention from markets that we were looking to enter into, which we sort of hadn't had a lot of traction in, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, hello, can we have a chat? So, and I think there are certain countries around the world where sort of British heritage, and also sort of just British culture, places like Japan, China, it's very heavily recognised. So, and I have heard from various people that anything that's got the King's Award logo on it will help you in certain countries. So I think it will open a lot of doors for us going forward.
Sure.
Can I add to that, Robin? Because
yes,
we also won a King's Award 2 years ago. It also, I mean, some countries, they are so crazy about the royals, much more than domestically, because people are we take it for granted. So they really, really find it a good talking point culturally. But a King's Award will push you up tender lists. So if you're applying for tenders, it's your due diligence fast track. So that's really important. It helps with procurement and tender applications.
No, that's good. That's useful insight there. James, coming to you. I know at this moment in time you don't have a King's Award. However, I'm sure that in time you will be winning that. What do you find rewarding about what you do?
Yeah, I mean, mine's I guess slightly less glamorous and maybe fish. Like it takes me places that I never would have gone to. So, but like for instance, before everything kicked off with Israel and Palestine, literally maybe a couple weeks before, in Palestine, eating at this guy's house in Nablus, and just I find it amazing to get to places and be paid to go to them for things that then give you reference points for the things that happen in the world. And I just find that absolutely fascinating. Love the fact that by exporting, you get to find out more about these places, and yeah, it just fits into every day something and gives you a new reference point.
Sure. I think it's obvious talking to all three of you that you find exporting rewarding. It's just sometimes it's nice to hear what the specifics are there. Okay, so moving on to something else here. I'm checking the questions just for the audience, and we need some more questions really. So whilst you are considering what you want to ask our panel, prior to putting them in there, I'm going to continue with a couple of other subject areas. The next one is contracts. And I have spoken to many exporters, and many of them think, yeah, contract, it's too much for me to get involved in, too much nitty gritty. Oh, I do the top line stuff. Contracts, what are your top tip considerations? And James, let's stay with you on this one.
Well, first of all, to have one.
Yeah, great.
We didn't do contracts for our first few sales, to be honest. Like I just sent them a pro forma, signed it, and then we invoiced it. We do contracts now. They are very simple. We do include very clearly what our terms for the sale are. Things like we only take 100% payment up front for our free. We also do give the option that they can do that via a bank guarantee or a letter of credit, so that they can receive the goods first before then we're paid for them. Because I mean, every deal for us is a six-figure number. So if we take no payment up front and we send them and we don't get paid, that'll probably be the end of our business. So I mean, that's how important the contracts are for us.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of just thinking of specific areas, say like the legalities, if a deal went wrong, do you specify in there, for example, which law will be followed?
Yeah, we specified to the UK and in the town of the company as well.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. And your clients, do you ever get any pushback from them?
No, never.
Good. No. Okay. Great. So what we've heard there from James is one, the way not to do it right at the start. Yeah. Always have a contract. And two, there's nothing wrong with pushing a point, going for something you're familiar with, because if you are exporting and you're taking goods many miles away, much harder if the legalities that are going to be used for any dispute are based there rather than here. Glenn, coming
a specific
to you.
one. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Just a real specific one for anyone who's going through that process. Look up the Incoterms for delivery, because for products, that's a huge thing that you want in the contract. It's just who's responsible on the buyer and seller side for the different steps of it leaving your factory and arriving at customers. So apologies to interrupt.
Can I add?
No,
Can I add another tip to everybody on the call, please, Robin? I'd like to recommend that people sue quickly. So if there is anything goes wrong, don't waste time. Take people to court straight away, in market if you need to. And we did a project with Manchester University, and I asked all the students where they thought we sued most. They all expected it to be America because of our customer base, and it's China. So it's really important to get your head around the contracts, and then to get your head around the court systems and how people behave. This goes back to culture, and then don't waste time. And we've won every case we've fought in China.
Wow, that's fantastic. Do you have good contacts with regards to the legal representation?
Well, so this is interesting, actually, because if you ask DBT, their list of suppliers is top end, very, very, very expensive. And it is really expensive for your contracts, for your legal documents, and to have representation. So we started, with it's costing us a fortune, and in the end we went and found local suppliers, and we have local suppliers. We can't speak Chinese, they can't speak English, but we get there, and even we'll all go to court together, and they'll defend us in Chinese, and we'll all sort of try and literally translate to each other. But having excellent representation that really knows the local legal system is massively important to you.
No, it's a top tip there. And also, if anybody is ever engaging with Scott Partnership, don't mess around, because Kath will be on your case. Glenn, over to you. Top tips on contracts. What do they mean to you?
I agree with James. Try and keep them as simple as possible. Incoterms, vitally important. I mean, if you can get X Works or FCA, that's the best outcome possible, because all of the responsibility sits with the buyer. Marine insurance is also another one, definitely. For given the state of the world, and when you're shipping stuff around, and there's pirates lurking and all sort of points on the way to places in the world. So it's a bit of a some of ours are easy because you're just dealing with local distributors, but then when you're dealing with huge retailers, with the likes of, say, Walmart, there's they tend to have a bit more clout in terms of contract negotiations than we do. But it's excuse me. I think it's trying to keep it as simple as possible, and like James, everything in UK law.
Okay, and in terms of payment, because this is one that I hear a lot. I am an exponent of, if you want to be paid in sterling for an export, don't be afraid to say so. Don't be afraid to push it. And I come a lot. I talk to a lot of people who say, "Oh, we tried that. They didn't want to know. We had to do this. We had to do that. We had to use this Incoterm." And I'm always saying, negotiate. What experience have you had with regards to currency?
We're just always GBP. I think we've got one customer who pay us in euros, but everyone else is GBP, and we specify that up front when we speak to people, and we'll always quote in GBP as well, because we find if people want to work with us, they'll just they'll come to the party. So
no, it's good to hear you do that. And just coming back on Incoterms, really, really interesting that your preferences for, say, X Works, for example. We run regular sessions on Incoterms, and of course there's 11 variations, and people don't know. And just picking up on James's point on Incoterms there, make sure that if you are using an Incoterm, it's on everything that you produce. Yeah, because it's okay, put it in the contract, that's fine, that's the legal basis, but just make sure everybody's on board. So any quotes that you're using or whatever, make sure that you've put it on there, any documentation, everybody knows exactly where they are. Then there's no misconstruing it.
Robin, can I point out? Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I mean, everything that all our commercial invoices and manifests and everything like that, we always state the Incoterm on there. Just to safeguard against any issues that may arise. Yeah.
Client turning around saying, "Oh, we thought you were doing this." Yes, yeah. So, Kath, go for it.
I was just going to give a tip about currency, because we started only selling in GBP, and ultimately we realised that we could potentially sell to more customers if we were a bit flexible on currency. So we sell in 3 currencies: GBP, USD, renminbi. We don't sell in euros, although actually the EU is one of our largest markets. But the big thing about currency, if you're invoicing in pounds, is to make sure your customer realizes the invoice is in pounds, because otherwise, they're trying to pay you in dollars, and there's bank charges, and there's this and there's that. So it's really important that both sides know what currency they're actually transacting in. Just takes so much time with the finance otherwise.
Okay, right. Now we are coming to the last couple of minutes. I am going to ask each of you, if you could, in one sentence, give me your thoughts on IP, intellectual property. It came up in a question earlier on. That question has disappeared. But really, I mean, it's one of those things that I think is essential. Kath, a one-liner, maybe 2 lines on IP.
Yeah, so I answered the question, which is why it's disappeared.
Thank you.
Actually, we don't even trademark in the UK, and the only place we have IP is in China. It's a whole nother story. It's part of one of our legal challenges. We ended up owning our IP in China by pursuing people through the courts. So it's important to recognise the markets where it's important. But, you know, in services, it's probably less important than actually in goods.
Okay, Glenn?
Just work in private label, then it's not an issue.
Right. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. One sentence. James.
Yeah, I mean, mine also. I think sometimes IP is overrated. Like, I mean, for us, a lot of it's software anyway, and it's closed source, and there's not a lot people can do to try to get ahead of us.
Right. Okay. No, thank you. Glenn, quick question here. I see in the Q&A. Do you focus your export for your finished bread products, or do you also export the basis for making the bread products in the export country?
No, so we only do the finished products. So we do get a lot of inquiries about, you know, can you send us mixes or flours or things like that? But no, we only ever export the finished product from whatever category it may be coming from.
Okay. A question here from Chloe. We currently don't have any customers overseas. Sorry, it moved. But we've been trying to find customers for 6 months. Your tips, 1 tip each, on the best way to build a brand in Europe. I guess you could sort of spread that wider, building a brand generally, but specifically she's asking for the EU. Kath?
So I was just typing an answer actually to Chloe.
Thank you.
So definitely it's better for people to know that you exist than not. And so absolutely defining who your prospective customers are and targeting them directly is massively important. Normally, for most companies, that starts with your existing customer base and exploring how you can follow those people through the supply chain. So if you have a customer in the UK who has a partner in the EU, you can really build on that. Making a big splash when you enter the market or preceding the market. You can do all sorts of things using DBT, such as have a launch party in the Parisian embassy if you're entering France, for example. But PR into that market, direct communication with prospects, and use all the marketing tools you'd use in the UK.
Yeah, and Chloe, if I can just add to that, I would say, if I'm allowed to pitch anyway, I might get told off, but join UK Export Academy. We run sessions on exactly this kind of thing: how to build your brand, how to build your product, how to enter different international markets, how to undertake your market research, all the things that you're going to need to do to get into the EU, and then also looking at how to move goods across the borders and so forth. So please bear that one in mind. Jules, we've answered your question, I think, which was to James about HS codes, and he's sort of gone through the various parts of that, which I think brings our session to an end. We were told by the organizer that we could be up to 5 minutes overrun, so we are only 2 minutes overrun. I would just like to say a humongous thank you to our guest panelists today, to our export champions, to James, Glenn and Kath. Thank you very much for all your insights. And I'd also like to say a massive thank you to everybody that's come on live today, but also to everybody if you're watching this as a recording. It's great that you are that interested, that you come along, that we can help you. Reach out to us. Any questions you've got. You've got 3 fantastic export champions here. You've got the support of DBT in anything that you'll be wanting to do overseas. Don't be afraid to ask any questions and to reach out to us. There is a feedback form in the chat, and your comments are always welcome. Please, it gives some future direction. If you think today's gone well, then say so. If you think that there was something that was missing, or maybe something that could have been added, please say, because it will give us some ideas for taking things forward. Watch out for the recording, which is in the Alumni Hub where you're registered. And I think that's it. So, Kath, thank you. Glenn, thank you. And James, thank you all very, very much. I think it's been a fantastic session, and I look forward to working with you all again at some future point.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Take care all.